the actor of Lex Luthor in Lego DC Supervillains is Clancy Brown, who has been in a lot. He was Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob. He was in Punisher. He was in a whole bunch of different things.
No, I know him.
He was the one who voiced Lex Luthor in Superman the Animated Series and Justice League Unlimited as well, which is how I got to know Lex Luthor. So he's the best actor to play him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know Clancy Brown kind of has his toes in every pool. I don't know if that's the right term.
Let the dogs out.
Let the dogs out.
Hello there.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Talk to me, Goose.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Why so serious?
World! I could do this all day.
Are you watching closely?
Welcome, everybody, to the One Night Film Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Mossberg, and Zach is here with me to talk about the DCEU. Heyo. Let's get right into it. I don't have anything creative to get you to listen, so please listen. That's all I got. I got no hook. I got no funny moments. Just please.
Give us views.
Give us views. All right. Is the DCEU dead? I think that's pretty obvious.
Objectively, it is. So.
Objectively, it is. I don't know if when Aquaman 2 came out and then left theaters, if that's when it died. It's not that specific. It died, I believe, when James Gunn was announced to be the new head of DC and said he was rebooting everybody except for Blue Beetle, which is weird, but we'll get to that.
And Peacemaker.
Because he's his baby. We're going to be talking about all of the DCEU, what went wrong, and what is going to absolutely go flawlessly and correct with the DCEU, right?
Yeah.
It's all going to go perfect. That's going to be very interesting to see.
It's not like Warner Brothers is the problem.
No, they're not power hungry at all and have never messed up a movie after it's almost finished. Ugh.
They're not the reasons everything has gone wrong.
I think I want to start off with a question that I don't want to go movie by movie. We'll get to each one individually, which I also realized there's a lot more than I thought because they're so haphazard. And I remember talking about, I don't remember which episode it was in, but I brought up the guy who reordered the MCU movies as though they were released in DCEU order, and just how much of a mess the Marvel Cinematic Universe would have been if it was released like DC was. So I'll probably link that into the description again because it's a very interesting look at how bad DC was in releasing movies because they're playing ketchup and mustard with Marvel, trying to get the team-up movie, the better movie. It didn't work. So the question I wanted to start off with is answering if Snyder's vision was good. When he created Man of Steel, presumably as a one-off movie, they knew that they wanted to start a cinematic universe because Marvel was doing so well. This was 2013 when Man of Steel released, but Dawn of Justice didn't get released for another 3 years. And that was technically Man of Steel 2. So they kind of dropped the ball on riding off the coattails of Man of Steel, really. I still enjoy Man of Steel, but people always say that Snyder should have just directed a Batman movie instead of a Superman movie because he was like, oh, Superman. He's always been like that. I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast and he's like, oh, they're just terrible people and it's dark and gritty and that's just Snyder. And so having him do Superman is just weird. And it wasn't a bad movie. Like I said, I still like it. It's interesting. And I'm thinking about like the color palette. I feel like you really see Snyder's hand in the color palette where everything's really muted. Everything's desaturated. It's the Marvel way. Same thing with Captain America. It's a very good comparison between Superman and Captain America, Man of Steel, and the First Avenger. Their suits are very desaturated for a modern look. So after that, then they had BVS, which was very interesting because, again, probably because of Snyder. And then it just started going downhill because partially, I would say, they didn't keep up with Snyder's vision. And it kind of suffered from what I would say Star Wars suffered from, where they wanted to have one story. That's kind of the point of a greater sequel saga universe, is to have one story going through all of it. But there's no communication with everyone else. They're just making their own movies and hoping it'll come together. Marvel did that. DC did not. I heard one commentator or one video essay say that the feeling for the Marvel movies was like, oh, it's a new Ant-Man movie out. He's going to be in the new Avengers. I should go see it so that I know what is going to happen in the Avengers movie, even if I don't like Ant-Man that much. DC never really had that problem because they didn't have a plan. And yet you still felt like you had to go see all of the DC movies because you thought maybe they might connect like Marvel was doing. because they were copycats. They're copying each other back and forth. And I do say that that's a problem I've had with Marvel, is that you need to watch every single thing in order to understand what's going on in the greater story. And even that has fallen apart in Phase 4 and 5. But even still, DC has never had that under control, having a greater story. And it shows. It shows in the DCEU, and hopefully will change with the DCU. And hopefully I'm pronouncing that clearly enough so that you understand which one is which. I still think James Gunn should have picked a different type of phraseology to describe his universe, but that's not a big gripe.
He is the one who did the Suicide Squad after Suicide Squad, so...
We all know James Gunn is great at naming things. I've yapped for too long. I've yapped for 5 minutes straight. It's time for you to give your opinion, your opening thoughts, your opening statements, my prosecuting friend.
On Snyder?
Was Snyder's vision good for the DCEU, or just the general flow of the story over the multiple movies?
So the DCEU really went through, like, 4 eras, I think. Snyder's was really the only one where there was a plan. So yeah. I'll give him that. He had a plan.
Don't mess with Snyder's plan. You mess with Snyder's plan, bad things happen with the fan base and the studio's relationship.
And I think he was going to give us something that was cohesive and made sense. I think would have been better than what kind of we ended up getting for the universe. But I do think that he was a controversial choice from the beginning to kind of be the Kevin Feige of the DC universe. And I do agree that I don't think he was the right choice to be the head of DC. I think he was too focused on kind of the dark and the gritty and the mature. And I think they did kind of want to separate themselves from Marvel and be able to stand on 2 legs. But I think in doing that, they lost the essence of their characters. When you go see Superman or Batman or pretty much any of them, you want to see them for the characters they are. You don't want to see these dark and gritty and, quite frankly, sad versions of these characters for the most part. I mean, if you go back to, like, the 90s and the early 2000s, they had the Batman, the animated series, and then that went into Superman the animated series and Justice League Unlimited, Batman Beyond. They had all these shows that were good and, like, still, like, well regarded because they captured the essence of the characters very well. And that's where Zack Snyder really fumbled, is instead of giving us the characters we wanted, he gave us these almost shells of the characters, I would say.
Can I ask you, though, you said people don't want to see the gloomy, sad characters, the gloomy, sad versions of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, but you really like the Batman, and that's a sad and gloomy character.
I said I don't want characters to lose their essence of who they're meant to be. And Batman is meant to be a more dark character, but I think Zack Snyder still went too far with him. I think the Batman does a better job at kind of capturing the darkness and the hope.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of the Batman, is the hope part. I am glad we never got a fully fleshed out Batman movie from Snyder, because from what I've heard, he didn't understand the character. And we talked about that in the Batman episode 2 months ago. But
sounds like there were going to be some really good fight scenes in that, though. So
that's the thing. You got to give him the fight scenes. Yeah, there's some good choreography. He does jujitsu, I think. He knows certain choreographers, and so you got to give him that.
He was going to do a Batman battle with Deathstroke that was inspired by a fight scene from the game Arkham Origins. I sent you the clip of it a while back, and that would have been pretty cool. But besides that, I didn't really have much hope for Zack Snyder's Batman film.
Continuing on the Snyder train, 2 things I want to talk about. You mentioned Deathstroke, and the cameo that went nowhere at the end of Justice League. That was kind of sad, because I feel like maybe I was getting flashbacks to Arrow Deathstroke and how good that villain was, and wanting that in the DCEU, or to face off against these people. But I feel like Deathstroke is a great villain and could have been interesting if they did anything with him, but they didn't. And now I want to watch the Arrow again to see the season 2 and the rivalry and the head-to-head that they had.
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, you're rewatching. Yeah. Oh man, we need to cover those, and I need to rewatch some of them. So we have Deathstroke that never got resolved. I almost want to say the post-credit scene with him and Lex is almost just a step below the cheesy level with Vulture and Morbius. Because Vulture is like, we should get some people together and do some teaming up of our own. And then Lex is like, we should have a league of our own.
Oh yeah, they are basically the same line.
Yeah, it's the same line.
Yeah.
Jesse Eisenberg's, we should have a league of our own, or however he talks. I don't know. That's the other thing. Why did he think Jesse Eisenberg was a good
I don't know.
choice for Lex Luthor?
There's so many questions. Who thought Ezra Miller was a good choice for Flash? There's so many questions we could ask.
Yeah, I believe Nicholas Hoult talked to Jesse Eisenberg and said, "What do you think I should do for Lex Luthor?" And I'm pretty sure Jesse Eisenberg was like, "Not what I did." He knew full well. He knew full well he didn't play the character to the fullest extent.
Well, Jesse Eisenberg was almost playing more like the Riddler or the Joker instead of Lex Luthor in his portrayal.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which was just crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to make these characters real. They've always been fantastical. They were never meant to be taken seriously in their original comic book form, and yet they've managed to do them, some better than others. We would always say that Heath Ledger's Joker is the better version. Even though he doesn't have a backstory, it makes sense as a character, just how he acts and plays a role in the story. I think, again, I remember the Gotham show being very good in places. I know there were some, it's one of those shows that kind of falls off closer to the end, but you mentioned the Riddler and the Penguin, I know, in that series really kind of shined as giving a backstory to both why they are choosing the wrong side of the law and how they kind of get their persona. I think that's a great show to kind of explore that. But you're right. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor was pretty much the Riddler, trying to be coy, trying to be cool. And I've been playing Lego DC Supervillains.
Heck yeah!
And the Lex there is just so much more intimidating in Lego form than Jesse Eisenberg, because he's got a deep voice for one, and maybe the suit is a little far-fetched for live action. Maybe they could have explored that. Jesse Eisenberg's Luthor was very much like Zemo, where he wasn't like an active villain.
Oh, yeah.
But he was more coy and planning and cunning than actually a physical force. And Zemo was good. I still think Zemo was a better villain.
Yeah. Quick side tangent. The actor of Lex Luthor in Lego DC Supervillains is Clancy Brown, who has been in a lot. He was Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob. He was in Punisher. He was in a whole bunch of different things.
Oh, I know him.
He was the one who voiced Lex Luthor in Superman the Animated Series and Justice League Unlimited as well, which is how I got to know Lex Luthor. So he's the best actor to play him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know Clancy Brown kind of has his toes in every pool. I don't know if that's the right term.
Let the dogs out.
Let the dogs out. Yeah, I remember. Was he actually in Punisher? I knew he was in the Daredevil episode.
Yeah, he came back in Punisher because they were flashbacks.
Okay, I was going to say probably flashbacks. I really liked his character there, but I was also very surprised to know he was Mr. Krabs as well.
Well, he also played Surtur in Thor Ragnarok.
Yes, that's right. Clancy Brown, W actor.
Legend.
Let's keep working our way through the list. The Justice League drama. Goodness me. I remember the drama of the Justice League. It's crazy that it took 3 years for that whole thing to almost 3.5. Wow. Justice League came out in 2017. I didn't see it probably till 2019. And then during the pandemic, people started chanting almost for the Snyder Cut, and they got it. And lo and behold, it was a success and a failure at the same time, because people loved it. And it showed that Warner Bros. Was willing to let Joss Whedon throw the movie under the bus, put it in the blender, smash it with a baseball bat, and try and bake it into a cake that would make sense. And no one liked it. Like, it was a marvelification of a movie that didn't need to be marvelified. The characters just don't translate the same. People have always compared, you have the America character, Superman and Captain America. You have the tech character, Batman versus Iron Man. They're not that comparable because they're very different people. Just because they're owned by different companies and are based off of each other doesn't mean that they're the same character. Even though I think like Shazam and Captain Marvel are technically the same character, more or less. Like sometimes, or was it Shazam was Mr. Marvel?
He was Captain Marvel.
He was Captain Marvel. Shazam was Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And then there was another Captain Marvel, and then they changed him to the DC version to Shazam. I remember trying to watch through the Snyder Cut, and it was a Snyder movie. Lots of slow-mo. He had to do the weird aspect ratio, which his reasoning makes sense, but only if you're still watching on a CRT TV that is 4:3 aspect ratio, because everyone was either watching it on their phones or TV, and it didn't make sense. His reasoning to have more vertical space, and that's the reason for IMAX existing, is so that you can use more vertical area of your movie, of your shot. but it doesn't make sense when everyone's watching it, when you have no way to actually watch it that way, because now you have massive black bars on the side while you're watching a 4:3 movie. I never got that. It's a catch-22. It's like, it makes sense, but it doesn't. I don't know. I like experimenting with aspect ratios. I loved how WandaVision did it, and that worked because it was a TV show, especially a TV show that worked through all of the eras of television. The other one that comes to mind is Hunger Games, when she's going up into the stadium. It goes from the black bars and then slowly grows as it kind of shows her world that she's now in with the, I don't even remember what the arena is called, but it shows like an expanding view of her world. Same with Interstellar. Whenever they're in space, not whenever, but often when they're in space, it'll be full frame. And then when they're on Earth, it's got the black bars. I don't know. I love that. I love that type of stuff. Unless it's Snyder's Justice League, because it didn't work. I'm sorry. That was my little tangent.
I think what many people need to realize, and kind of put in perspective, that the Snyder Cut wasn't what was going to theaters, if you know what I mean. A 4-hour movie wasn't going to go to theaters, is what I'm going to say.
You're right.
And I think it wasn't going to be R-rated either, I assume. So
I definitely think that the movie that was in production before the tragic loss of his daughter was not what we got to see. It was going one direction. Joss Whedon definitely continued it, but put a lot of his twist into it.
Yeah.
And then when Snyder was able to redo a lot of it, he was like, oh, I have all this money. Now I really get to make what I want, and really kind of changed his vision for it, because he now had that flexibility. He didn't have that flexibility before he left the project originally. And yet they still said that they didn't do a ton of reshoots, I don't think. It was still a lot of original content from the movie. Correct me if I'm wrong, but...
Yeah, I think I heard the same thing too, which is so weird and doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Because it sounded like, too, that when Joss Whedon came on, they had set like a clear 2-hour runtime mark for him. So I don't know when they were going to throw it at Zack Snyder.
Yeah, that was the other thing, is that I believe Snyder wanted to make a longer movie, and they told him to cut it shorter before the whole thing with his daughter went down. They told him to cut it shorter so that they can fit more screenings into a movie theater, because most movie theaters are open from like 3 to 10 or 11, and you can only fit so many 3-hour movies. So if you get 2-hour movies, then you can fit an extra screening in. Now, Warner Brothers doesn't know that you have to make a movie good to get people to come and fill those screenings, but they did that, and Snyder wasn't happy about that.
Yeah. Funny thing about the theatrical version, I actually saw it in theaters, because I was at Thanksgiving at my uncle's, and he was like, do you guys want to go see this? So we were like, sure. And leaving the theater, I was like, that was an okay movie. But then the more I thought about it, it's like, that movie wasn't actually very good. And then a couple years ago, I watched half of the Snyder Cut with some friends. And because we didn't have time to watch the whole thing, none of us ever felt the desire to pick it back up. So yeah, because it was just so boring, and just the repeated slow-mo. I'm sorry I'm hurting the feelings of all the Snyder fans again. But
I don't think we have any Snyder fans in our audience. Comment in our Discord if you are a Snyder fan, because we want to tell you all our thoughts that are definitely nice and affirming. You're right. Like I said, I absolutely don't think that movie would have gone to theaters. I don't think it was what was originally intended. I'm sure a lot of the same story beats were intended, but you're right. It was very slow paced because it was releasing on HBO Max instead of in theaters, and he spent way too long. I mean, people say that about his new Rebel Moon, is that it's just so long and unnecessarily long. So I don't know. People praise him a lot, and he has some good cinematography.
Yeah.
It's not all, like, as a whole, it's not that great. I remember his zombie movie. There was one where he was like a film student in college who was trying all of the techniques that you're supposed to have. And so he had very, very shallow depth of focus. And so there was a lot of shots where a character was walking for 3 seconds before getting in focus, because you just see a blur, and then slowly there's like this much space, but you can't even see. There's like this much space where your face would actually be in focus, because in this dimension. And that was something that he was like, "Ooh, it's so cinematic." And I'm like, no, it just doesn't look good.
Characters can have dark stories. Sometimes the dark stories are the ones that are the most highly regarded. And that's not because the stories are always dark. The reason that the dark stories hit so well is that because they're mostly light stories for most of the time. That's why the dark stories hit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking at the rest of the movies from the DCEU, which is dead, and realizing that the whole fumbling, as I thought of the word fumbling, I thought it probably started with Justice League, but it's like the feeling when you drop your phone and you juggle it and then you're trying to save it and then you end up kicking it and then...
That's the DCEU right there.
You could have just let it land on the carpet.
Yeah.
Or you could cause more damage by playing ping pong with it around the room.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. I feel like they fumbled with Justice League. Aquaman brought in a lot of money. Shazam, you really like Shazam. But after that, they just kind of dropped everything. It's like the Spider-Man catching all of the food items, but all of the bloopers back to back to back to back to back. Birds of Prey was not good. Wonder Woman 1984 was not good. The Suicide Squad, not necessarily. It's like that existence is also weird because it's a soft reboot that has some characters but pretends the previous movie didn't exist. Black Adam, I remember seeing that. That was freaky. I did not expect it to go the demonic route at the very end. I don't know if did you see it?
Oh yeah, I saw Black Adam.
Okay. It was such a weird, again, an offset one that should have had Billy Batson in it. Mm-hmm. And then Shazam Fury of the Gods, you said was bad compared to Shazam 1.
Yeah.
And then The Flash, one of the funniest bad movies I've ever seen. It's so funny to just have the ability to talk about how bad it is in theaters because almost everyone was like, Blue Beetle is actually, I enjoyed Blue Beetle, but as the Critical Drinker pointed out, it's 10 years too late for the Blue Beetle. It makes sense. It's a okay superhero movie, but not after Infinity Saga had ended. Anything, if it had come out during the Infinity Saga, it would have been a great movie, but it was just kind of meh. Aquaman 2, never saw it. So that's basically the quick run through of all the movies. I don't even know that they had any control over the situation because, like I said, I don't think they ever had a consistent idea for a final team up. The only team up one we got was Justice League, which was fumbled by Joss Whedon. And then actually a lot of cameos the more you think about it throughout all of the movies that have been released. Even James Gunn poking fun at the faceless superheroes. Actually, no, I think they had faces in Peacemaker's show when the Justice League lands in front of them. I thought Jason Momoa was in there.
Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa, I think is what I heard.
Yeah. So that's what I got.
So kind of how these eras that I mentioned work is that you had like Man of Steel through kind of half of Justice League was your Zack Snyder era. Mm-hmm. And then kind of for the other half of Justice League, and I think maybe Aquaman, there were these two other guys in charge. Jeff Johns was one of them, who's a comic writer. But kind of due to the how Justice League bombed, they were quickly kind of kicked out. And then I think maybe from like Shazam to 1984 maybe, there was this guy named Walter Hamada. Mm-hmm. And what he wanted to do, he wanted to have the Justice League Trinity be Supergirl, Batgirl, and Wonder Woman. That's what he wanted to do. And during this time, while they were developing all this, they were like, hey, let's just make movies. So that's why we got Shazam, that's why we got Joker, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, and even like the Suicide Squad, I think, too, was just because they were like, hey, let's try to make some money, because we don't have a lot of money. In terms of money, we have no money. Because through the Snyder movies, they were always like, why aren't these movies making $1 billion? The Marvel movies are making $1 billion. They were able to make this with a pile of scraps.
Mm-hmm. Well, you want to know why? Because they were good movies.
Yeah.
It's not just about numbers, Warner Brothers.
Even though a lot of the movies were still making a lot of money, Warner Brothers was considering them failures because they weren't hitting $1 billion. Even though it's so difficult for a movie to actually do that, it's got to be extremely good. So then Warner Brothers was acquired by Discovery, and then the new head of Warner Brothers was the guy named David Zaslav, I think his name was. And he was kind of like, this whole plan to have Supergirl, Batgirl, and Wonder Woman be the heads of DC, that's really dumb. So he kicked out Walter Hamada. Yep. And then this is kind of where Dwayne Johnson sneaked in.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how that happened. Someone decided to give him more power than he should have had. And that's why Black Adam was bad. That's why Shazam Fear of the Gods was bad. Because he thought Black Adam was going to be this big, important character. When Black Adam really isn't even that big of an important character in the whole scope of DC characters, so that's why we never saw Shazam in Black Adam or Black Adam in Shazam. It's because Dwayne Johnson has an ego.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you think his ego and shift of focus to the DC character, especially of Black Adam, but also kind of these few movies surrounding it, came after a frustrating almost departure from the Fast and Furious franchise, because as I'm watching through them, he was very involved through 8, and then I don't think he's in 9, but he obviously had Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah, he had Hobbs and Shaw.
So he wasn't in 9, he wasn't in 10 until the post-credit scene when he comes back, and everyone thought that he wasn't going to be in it because of a falling out. So I think in that time period when F9 and Fast X released, he was kind of on his DC train, and now he's back to Fast and Furious. We'll see where that goes in Fast X Part 2 or F11 or some other stupid name. I think that's what happened, is that he was like, oh, DC. He lost his one franchise and he's like, oh, back with this one who needs some help, and he made it worse.
And now that he's had his frustrations with DC, he's moving on to Disney. So
yeah, with his Moana 2 and live action Moana. Why are they making them at the same time? That makes no sense.
Know. Well, there's also like 3 Frozen movies in development right now.
Really?
I think they're doing Frozen 3, Frozen 4, and live action Frozen. I think those are all in some state of production right now.
Let's talk about Batwoman for a second.
Batgirl.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Batwoman's a different character.
My bad. I am so sorry.
How dare you?
Batgirl is such a cautionary tale, I suppose. Not the character, the movie. There is so much that was leading up to it, and people were kind of excited for it. It's rare that a movie just gets canceled out of nowhere. It doesn't make sense to do that, especially with how much money you put into it. It's obvious. I believe the story is now that there was a tax write-off and they could get more money back from it, and it actually wasn't a loss. Imagine the hundreds of people who have already put effort into it, all of the actors who now just can't say anything. You know that they were in it. You know the character or the actors who are going to play those characters, and it doesn't exist anymore. And I don't even think that the movie exists. I don't think like the shots are stored anywhere. They just wiped them, I think.
The directors were even talking about how they tried to find it, but it was just gone.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even... I think part of it was like, oh, we know that the Snyder Cut was revived because of fan backlash, so we'll just delete everything so that can't happen. That's a terrible way to make a movie. Again, I think these producers, if it's producers or another role, are just looking at the numbers and not actually caring about the story, the characters, the fans. Like, even Star Wars still tries to care about the fans and at least is trying to teach them how non-binary can fit into the story of Star Wars and how the Force is female and all that good jazz that we all definitely want in Star Wars. But at least they say they care.
Tune into the Acolyte.
I don't think the DCEU overlords ever cared about the fans. And I think that's Warner Bros. In general.
Yeah. And also, talking about Batgirl, that was a confusing mix of canons, which didn't make any sense at all. Well, I think it was going to follow up The Flash, I think. I think it was always planned to come out after Flash, I think
it was supposed to come out before.
Okay. Well, anyways, it had Michael Keaton's Batman in it, because that was the point where they were going to try to bring him back in like a mentor / Nick Fury role long term, I guess, which is another thing that just didn't seem like a wise choice. But anyways, there was Michael Keaton Batman, but then it was going to be J.K. Simmons as Commissioner Gordon, who's the who's the Commissioner Gordon of the DCEU. So you already have very conflicting universes, and Michael Keaton's also much older than J.K. Simmons, which is weird for Batman and Commissioner Gordon.
Again, I think you'll agree with me on this. We've had our disagreements about nostalgia, but I don't think bringing Michael Keaton back is the right call, unless they were going to do a full story of an old Batman, which has been done before. I still don't think The Flash did it any justice. It was just kind of a gremlin and was very easily convinced to be Batman again. And then unceremoniously killed many different ways in the final fight, which felt disrespectful to everyone's nostalgia. Again, it's all about the numbers. They said, Michael Keaton is one of the most beloved Batmen. Let's bring him back. And they did. And it didn't do it justice. So
one of the weirdest things, too, with the Flash movie and Michael Keaton is that he's not really portraying the version of Batman that he played in the 90s. He's playing the one in this alternate universe that Barry created, which was weird to me. So
yeah, it's nostalgia baiting. I looked up the peak source of all information and all accurate knowledge Wikipedia for the Batgirl film to see what actually happened, because I'm sure it actually has a decent breakdown, and to get an idea of the timeline of how things happened. Principal photography began in November of 2021. Filming wrapped on March 31st, 2022. They finished filming everything. So I thought that they got halfway through filming or partway and canceled it. They finished filming. In August 2022, Warner Bros. Discovery, of course, announced that it no longer planned to release Batgirl on HBO Max or theatrically. Warner Bros. Felt the film simply did not work and went against the new desire and mandate from CEO David Zaslav to make DC films big theatrical event films. It's the most expensive canceled cinematic project ever, reported The Guardian. Unprecedented. Hamada was not consulted regarding the decision and only learned about it when Warner Bros. Informed him at a test screening for Black Adam.
Oh.
Oh no.
Oh, by the way, we're completely deleting that movie.
The cast and crew did not learn of the cancellation until after the New York Post broke the story on August 2nd. Oh my goodness. Imagine not knowing anything about the stuff going on behind the scenes.
Warner Brothers' phone was just going off the next day.
In January 2023, Peter Safran said the film was not releasable. Yeah, because you didn't finish it. And as it would not have been able to compete in theatrical marketplace, but it was built for a smaller screen. That hasn't stopped you before. That's a lousy excuse. I don't understand why they canceled it.
I mean, they could have dropped it on HBO Max. Is the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even know why they didn't do that.
I understand the subscription model is a dying process, and that's why most subscriptions are just turning into old cable.
Yeah.
But I understand it's not profitable. But it would have made more money than canceling it. Actually, I don't know that. Maybe the tax break got them plenty of money. I don't know. That was such a garbage move. When I was looking at video essays to research this, I found one that was very interesting because it had Lego in the title. And so I looked at it, and the guy made a great point. I'll link it in the description if you want to watch it yourself. That toys suffered from the DCEU's failure. Lego originally took off in the early 2000s when they were competing with Megabricks. They were actually very average, very consistent competitors. And they were like, okay, what marketing thing can we do to get ourselves out on top of Megabricks? And they started making Batman sets. In 2004-ish, they started making generic Batman sets that anyone would recognize, and they made bank. They made a lot of money off of that. Soon after that, superhero movies took off. They started licensing those and making sets off of the movies, and they were good. They were great sets. They were great movies. But if you notice, as a Lego fan, there have not been a lot of movie Lego sets anymore, even though there seems to be an extreme amount of even Marvel or DC movies. They just kind of have disappeared and have not been announced anymore. They've returned to nostalgia. They've made Dark Knight sets. They've made animated series sets, and I think that's great. But they know it costs Lego way too much to make the toys and have nobody buy it because the movie was bad. They know that. Lego is smart. They know, even though their prices are ridiculous, that I think maybe because their prices are ridiculous and inflation has gone up, that making these sets for Wonder Woman 1984, I believe, was the last DCEU set that they made. And I believe the point that he made in this video is that series, that push of Lego sets was not that great on Lego's part, which is fine. Lego can take some blame. But Lego just realized that if nobody's seeing the movies because they're bad movies, they're not going to make Lego sets off of them because nobody's going to buy them, even as play sets. The reason that they're not generic is because they're specific to a movie, and if the movie is bad, nobody's going to buy them. If they make them generic, they could still have a Wonder Woman and Cheetah type of Lego set, but I think it would have to be more in the lore of Batman rather than Wonder Woman 1984, where they hyper-realized Cheetah. I believe it was Cheetah, right?
Yeah.
They hyper-realized her, and so that, let's say the minifigure of Cheetah didn't look as good. And that makes sense. The reason Batman worked so well originally is because the animated shows and the origins of Batman were very goofy and very childlike. And so it's harder to make a adult live action movie that's gritty and dark and then convert that back into Lego, especially when you don't know that all the kids who are buying that set have even seen that movie. Not that it matters, they'll buy the set anyways. But it's this back and forth that I think Lego has just seen. They make more money off of their own IP, which is their Lego video games, their Lego movie, their Lego movie, the Lego Batman, Lego Movie 1 and 2, Lego Ninjago movie, those make more money because they have control over it, and these live action movies aren't doing them any favors. So I'd encourage watching that video down below because he has a great breakdown of the Lego sets and how they relate to movies.
So I want to talk about this kind of the last funny era of the DCEU, which was kind of like Shazam! Fear of the Gods to Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Funny?
Yeah, because these all came after the announcement that James Gunn was resetting the DCU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is where everyone went, well, why do these movies even matter then? You remember that?
And why didn't they make them tax write-offs? Why did they release those?
Well, first off, I want to say kind of what bothers me with kind of that statement is that, I mean, they're still movies that can be enjoyed, if that makes sense. They're not just parts of a universe. Because at least I still think, I mean, Blue Beetle isn't technically part of the DCEU, but I still thought that was quite enjoyable. That's a whole complicated thing. But
you're right.
Yeah, it was just kind of, I think it was poor planning to announce James Gunn's universe when you still have 4 movies coming out. Because I think all 4 of them suffered in the box office because of that.
I'm thinking what would be the other option? Logically, you would wait till they're out and then announce it. But by then, you're into last December when Aquaman 2 is released. And you know nothing of the future of the DC universe. And you're like, well, what? Why are they so radio silent? So I think it makes sense to announce that, but it doesn't make sense to follow it up with those movies.
Yeah, and I guess I feel like with the movies that came out, especially like Fury of the Gods, The Flash, and Aquaman The Last Kingdom, they just kind of drug the DC name further into the mud. So I think it probably would have been even harder to make a DC announcement during that time.
Yeah. Or they could have just admitted that those movies were bad.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know what it is about these directors who watch their movie. Like their editor calls them and is like, all right, I'm done with the movie. And they're like, all right, let's do a test screening. And they watch it and they're like, yeah, that was good. That was really good. And everyone else in the theater is like, you know, maybe this Flash needs another rewrite.
Oh, man. We could talk for a while about the Flash movie, but...
Well, good thing we have a Flash episode coming out soon. Yep. But I think that, we'll be talking about multiple versions of the Flash from that. But
just the weird thing about that movie, and I think it happened with a couple others, is just how many people are coming out saying how good it was. Do you remember that? Tom Cruise was talking about how good the movie was. And James Gunn, too, was. It's just crazy to me.
James Gunn had me convinced. I remember seeing his quick thoughts on it before I went and saw it. I was like, you know, maybe it's not going to be that bad. And I honestly think that was a marketing ploy from DC saying, James, you have to say something good.
Please, James, please.
On our knees, begging you, please. I think that's what happened. I don't know about Tom Cruise, but I don't see how you think that movie is a good one. Maybe James Gunn saw that it was the goofiness that superheroes were meant to have in their original form.
Especially James Gunn, who's into stunts. Or not James Gunn, Tom Cruise, who's into the stunts and the practical effects. I don't know why he would enjoy a movie like that, but to each is his own.
I know you've seen this, but I still want to share it and watch it and have fun because I think there's something here that we can talk about.
I'm here to help.
Well, since you guys are here, why don't we team up?
I'm sorry that I'm late. I'm glad to see that you all got started without me.
Frankly, I was a little surprised I got the invite.
Oh,
heck yeah.
I haven't seen that for a while. It still makes me wish that happened. If James Gunn can pull off something like that, I will be thrilled. Because I was going to end on this, but I think it fits here. Marvel and DC are on downward trends. The superhero movie genre in general is dead. We've been asking these questions. Is Star Wars dead? Is the MCU dead? Is the DCEU dead? Superhero movies are pretty much dead now. They have been failing year after year. I am very interested to see how the DCU kicks off and how Gunn is going to combine these stories. Because I think we can get a full Justice League one day if he's patient. And I think he is. I think he knows what's best.
I hope so.
For a superhero movie because he went through a lot of it with Marvel with him getting fired. Probably not necessarily rightly. They made a marketing move because of, oh no, one of our most successful directors was a sinner at one point. Oh no, and he has a morally perfect life now. No, I don't know what the reasoning behind firing over mean tweets is all about. But then he came back, and so he has made some of the most successful movies in the superhero genre. So I am excited to see him make new movies in the DCU. And I know we'll never get Grant Gustin, Henry Cavill, Christian Bale, and Ryan Reynolds together in the Justice League. if he can grow these characters in their own right with these new actors, with all these people that some haven't even been announced yet. Maybe it's completely brand new faces. I hope they're brand new faces or newish faces that don't have any other connections. Like we've talked about, you can't watch Knives Out without seeing Captain America. Let's have them be defined as these characters.
Wait, what do you mean by that? You can't watch Knives Out without seeing Captain America.
Because you see Chris Evans as Captain America. And so there you have a inkling in your head that he is Captain America. I think that. I know other people think that. I think it's similar even when I was watching Oppenheimer, that Robert Downey Jr. did a great job. You still saw Iron Man, though, even though they had him look old and he was acting different. It's just what you relate him to because you kind of started off getting to know that actor in those superhero movies. And I don't know the actor for Superman right now. I know Nicholas Hoult from a few things, and I couldn't name the Superman actor or the Lois Lane actor right now off the top of my head. I will one day because I believe I will relate their name to their character. So let's grow our feelings for these characters over the next couple of years and maybe have a revival of the superhero genre, but maybe it's just DC. I've hated on DC for a long time, and I hope I'm proven wrong. Not proven wrong. I am expecting a lot from the DCU, from James Gunn. I think he can deliver. I think it's going to be good. And I think one day we'll get a real Justice League that could be a team up the same way the Avengers was a team up after many foundation laying movies.
Well, James Gunn has said too that his DC universe is going to be based off like Justice League Unlimited and Young Justice. So I think I have high hopes.
Yeah. Speaking of that, though, we think that the team up movies are going to be a bunch of A-listers, which is fair. That's what it seems to be like. That's how you get the most money right off the bat. Why is he including Blue Beetle then? Blue Beetle is a probably C-tier superhero that I had never heard of before the movie, even though I enjoyed the movie. He's B or C-tier hero, and yet he liked it enough to include it, but also liked the Flash enough and didn't include it. Maybe it's a Warner Bros. Meddling thing, but I don't know why he's still including Blue Beetle.
I will say Sholo... What's his name? Sholo Manindwena. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, Sholo. But anyway, Sholo was a perfect casting for Blue Beetle. And I think one of the things that I'm excited for James Gunn to explore in his universe is to kind of explore your B and C characters. Because I think there are so many great characters like that. I mean, I'm excited to see a Green Arrow. I'm excited to see The Question, Captain Atom, The Atom, Wildcat. There's just so many of these characters that I think I'm excited to see explored because I grew up seeing them in, like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. So I really hope that I think it's very important to have your solid A, your main Justice League team, the main 7 or whatever. But I really hope to see kind of like these backup members too, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. Who in the Infinity Saga was kind of a B-tier hero that has now risen to A-tier? Was Hawkeye kind of a B-tier?
Well, Iron Man was B-tier.
Iron Man was B-tier. I forgot about that.
The Avengers were B-tier.
Yeah, Fantastic Four was really... That's why they made Fantastic Four before that. Yeah. And X-Men.
Marvel had to sell off all of their most popular characters. That's why Sony owned Spider-Man and Fox owned X-Men and Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
So.
Man, I feel like I would make a lot of millennials mad by really adoring the Avengers and Cap and Thor and Iron Man because they're like, no, that's not who Marvel is. I'm sure they love the new movies as well, but Spider-Man, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four were kind of the face of Marvel for a while. These movie rights are a whole different thing as well. I don't think there's that much discrepancy in DC as with Marvel. There is some, because I know with the Gotham show, again, they couldn't say the characters' names. They could write their entire backstory and make it very obvious who they were, but they could not say the Joker. They could not say Batman. It was very weird. And then I don't exactly know what the rights for the TV show or the Arrowverse versus the movies were. The only crossover we ever had was the 2 Flashes, and I think that was just a fun cameo. It didn't really mean anything except it was supposed to be alternate universes. But again, I don't know what the DC overall, not just DC films, what rights are where and who gets to do anything with what. I think isn't Superman and Lois still going?
Yeah, they're on their final season.
Okay, so they're wrapping up. That's the other thing. I feel like I should have watched this beforehand, but High Top Films had a video that I probably also linked in the Batman episode of his reasoning for and against the Batman being a part of James Gunn universe. Very interesting analysis that makes sense in 2 ways. Because he says, 1, it's an existing Batman that's being developed. He should just adopt him. But it's really Matt Reeves' pet project. And again, don't know what the rights situation is. Maybe we just have two different characters going at the same time. Like we talked about this. We have Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, especially releasing with Joker 2, Voix de la Louve.
Bless you.
We have The Batman with Barry Keoghan. I think I got that. Barry Keoghan as the Joker, and Robert Pattinson as Batman. And now we could have in the near future 3 Jokers and 2 Batmen at the same time being developed simultaneously, and you gotta live with that. You either gotta go all in for the connections or just admit that they're separate.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I'm pretty sure DC actually owns all their characters. It's just that Warner Brothers is dumb.
You're right.
Have you heard of the Bat embargo?
Bat embargo? No.
Have you heard of that term? So this has been going on for a long time, where DC or Warner Brothers doesn't want Batman used in TV projects and likewise things like that, because there's always apparently some Batman movie in some form of production. So they don't want any overlap like that. That's why we had shows like Batwoman and Titans and Pennyworth, because you can completely dance around Batman, but they couldn't just do Batman.
In 2007, it was revealed via The World's Finest that DC Comics writer Paul Levitz was the one who enacted the embargo. The reason Levitz supplied is that with the coming of the Batman, children, their target demographic, would be confused to see 2 different versions of the same characters at the same time. It makes sense, but they haven't done that.
Yeah.
They haven't done that, and they've continued to make 2 different things at the same time. Man, this would be interesting to research. These are all the cartoon ones, so it's a DC animated universe, so maybe it doesn't include any of our live action stuff. Maybe I'm just on the wrong wiki page. Let me go to Reddit. Nope, that's still the animated universe. So it must be an animated universe thing.
Well, I think there's some similar reason why we're getting all the shows like Titans, Batwoman, and Pennyworth that dance around the character of Batman without actually giving us Batman.
Yeah. Does that have anything to do with the Penguin show from Matt Reeves?
Oh, I even think in that show, they can have Bruce Wayne, but they can't have Batman, is what I heard.
Yeah. And they could, because Robert Pattinson has been known to do very low-budget movies for the heck of it because he respects the craft. So he's high name, but they could also get him for probably pretty cheap.
And that's also why the show Arrow kind of existed in the first place. Because they wanted, I think they wanted to do Batman, but they couldn't get access to Batman. So they turned the Green Arrow into Batman.
Oliver Queen became a lot like Batman very quickly. And I think that was the point. But I still love that show, or at least the first 2 to 3 seasons. And the Arrowverse had great success. I think it's very obvious saying that the next couple years of superhero movies are going to be interesting, but for very different reasons. Marvel, or actually probably for the same reasons. I take that back. Marvel is reevaluating. Deadpool and Wolverine is the only thing releasing this year. And I'm not saying that I expect the same thing as I did for The Flash. As in, I expected The Flash to reset the timeline in preparation for James Gunn's universe to come in, because he can do that. The Flash has that power of flashpointing the entire saga of craziness that was the last 10 years. And they didn't. They just made everything go back to normal. It's perfectly fine. But I see Deadpool and Wolverine messing up the timeline so much with the TVA, not necessarily wiping all of the past Marvel movies away, but redirecting it in a special way that I think could be interesting come 2025 and 2026. The DCU, the point of this episode, we're not talking about Marvel, is just blatantly rebooting, and it will be, I keep saying it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to watch how it develops in comparison to the Marvel Cinematic Universe back in 2009, 2008, how they got off the ground, and how he deals with leading an entire industry at Warner Bros., a whole genre instead of just his trilogy, because that could be different. Maybe he's going to handle it differently than he did with Guardians. We never know. So curiosity is in the future. That's what I got. I don't know.
Yeah, I said this all the way back in our Is the MCU Dead video. But after seeing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it definitely gave me more hope for DC than Marvel.
I forgot that we recorded that right before Guardians 3 came out, and then I said, guys, have you seen Guardians 3? And you said, heck yes, I have. All right, do you want to record a quick bit to throw in that episode?
Heck yeah.
I remember that. That was fun.
You had like no hope for the MCU at that point. I think you have more hope now, but...
compared to then? I don't know. Do I? I don't think I do, but it's knowing that they've delayed a lot of their shows and movies has given me more hope than I did like a year ago after Quantumania released and all that. So I think also how well Guardians 3 did compared to the rest of Phase 4 and 5 shows what we can expect from Gunn. I hope. I don't want him to be the savior, but he's going to do some cool stuff that I think people will be very interested in. Yes, the DCEU is dead. Marvel is dying. Can the DCU arise from the grave? Mm-hmm. Can it bring back superhero movies? Or time to move on to something else? Maybe original content for once? What?
Original content? Whoa.
Original content? No, we don't want that. What's this Fall Guy I hear about? That must be a lame movie.
Now, let's not go to that.
Oh my gosh. If you guys aren't on our Discord, I have a new channel where I've been putting my reviews of movies that I've seen, because there's not really a place for them here, because often we pre-record episodes way in advance, so we don't have accurate reviews of movies as they come out per week. So I put them there whenever I see them, and we also have plenty of conversations about new stuff over there. So I'm sure I'll be doing that about the DCU movies when they come out. And meanwhile, we can talk about Free Guy, because I don't think it's been getting enough attention.
Fall Guy.
Free Guy. Free Guy was also a good movie.
Yeah, another good movie.
Oh yeah, I forgot you sent me the meme of the Guy cinematic universe.
Oh yeah.
What was it? Free Guy, Fall Guy.
The other guys and the nice guys.
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen those two, but
weirdly a lot of Ryan movies.
Yeah.
2 Ryan Gosling, 1 Ryan Reynolds. Oh man. That's all I got, man. The DCEU is dead. I've made that clear. Everyone's made that clear. I'm glad it's over.
Warner Brothers said it themselves.
I'm glad it's over. It's been a pain to watch it die, especially, even leading up to James Gunn's announcement of being the head of DC. It just was, it's like watching a friend fumble with their phone and you're like, he's not going to catch it. And then it cracks and you're like, I think that's the best way to put it. And
when they're just coming out with movies to make money, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell they're suffering and dying.
Yeah. And we've seen this before with the studios that will give directors a blank check, like Christopher Nolan, to make whatever they want because they trust the directors. I don't think DC, whoever is at the head of DC, was ever trusting in their directors. They trusted their directors to make the movie happen. And then after the heads of DC saw the movie, they said, all right, actually, we're going to have to make you change all of that because that's not going to make us money. Money, money, money. insert Clancy Brown saying money, money, money.
Hello, I like money.
They just had so many course directions pretty much since the beginning that just to try and make the most amount of money instead of just staying on one path. And now they're dead.
Make good movies. Make good movies.
That's the lesson.
Make movies. Just make movies. There's a content creator. There's a content creator I occasionally watch who is a game developer. And he just says, make video games if you can. Even if you can't, make video games. That's how Lethal Company was created, is a kid just decided to explore this idea of trash collecting amongst monsters. And it became the top game of the year almost for last year. And he's made so much money off of it because he just made a game. And there are plenty of small movie companies, not even companies, just people making short films that just make movies. Just make movies and maybe they'll take off. Just make them good. You can make movies, yes. I don't want to go off on another tangent, but there is something to be said. This is where we've been fanboying for a while and not really talking about our Christian worldview and how it relates. But there is objectively truth, goodness, and beauty in the things that we find pleasure in. When we don't find pleasure in it, it's usually lacking one or all of those things because it's very hard to enjoy something that's not true, that's not good, and that's not beautiful. Those things are things that come from God. And yes, they're not godly films necessarily, but they're creative. Again, that's my passion personally as an artist and as a producer here on the podcast and in other things is to be mini creators. That's what J.R.R. Tolkien said in his reflection of being made in the image of God, is that we are mini creators that reflect our identity as children of God made in his image. And everyone is made in his image, regardless of if you believe that or not. And we can still appreciate creative movies like superhero movies that ultimately will not have any meaning. And I get very passionate about these things, and it's going to be meaningless when we get to heaven, right?
You could also add the lesson, when your love and your focus is on money, you don't make good things. There's our biblical takeaway.
The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and the DCEU. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Make sure to subscribe wherever you are listening and share this with your friends. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Discord. You join our server on Discord. You can't follow it. Whatever. I'm tired. Thanks for rambling with me. Know that you are loved. Until next week, God bless.
Peace.